I saw them in the another field, and they were just like almost a quarter mile away 5 minutes ago, and now they're here. There's like one. There's let me see. How many are there? There should be nine. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Oh, wait, they're getting into a little dispute over there. Yeah, because I threw out some bagels, old freezer burnt. And look at it; it's just running around, and it's guarding its treasure in its mouth, and then somebody else is chasing after it. It's got that. Oh, that's yeah, that's right. That's that bagel. It was a gluten-free bagel. Funny. It likes that one way better than the apples because it has a lot more carbohydrates in it because those gluten-free products are just loaded with carbs. At least the ones they put on the market, to mimic what actual preservative-laden bread tastes like. So if you're watching this, push the like button. Help me push this thing out further because, we only get the turkeys for a few months out of the year before they go off someplace else. They come under the crosshairs of a hunter's gun. They do come like every day. There's not very many apples left on those trees. There's like one on that one, and then behind there are one, two, yeah, there's four. I have four apple trees total, and most of the apples have been consumed by either the turkeys or the deer, and a few by the squirrels. So, yeah, they're really feisty this morning. Feisty, feisty turkeys. Yeah, 10 rank, 79. These wild turkeys aren't as tasty as the farmed turkeys. It may be just as tasty, but they're kind of tough because they've been in. Well, let me see. It was one of my neighbors. His boy is tribal. The only people who can hunt these are people who are tribal. So the ones in BC are fantastic. Yeah, well, these ones here are tough. They are like you take a piece of meat and then you start chewing on it, and it's like bubble gum. Fatima, welcome. It's like bubble gum. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger in your mouth, and then you spit it out, and you go for the next piece. And so if you're just cooking it under normal means, I believe you have to. I think what my neighbor did, who is a near professional level hunter. I don't think he's not a he's a business owner, but uh, he's been hunting, bow hunting, and all kinds of stuff like that his whole life. At any given time, his freezer has six. He gets like six elk a year. I think that with all of his children and his wife, and then his grandmother getting everybody a tag, so he goes out and gets like six elk a year. Yeah, I think that's about right. And so that means his children, of course, they all have dibs on all that elk meat, but he don't eat anything but stuff that he's hunted. I should get my tripod so I can have a more steadier view. But yeah, he had one of these things, Hey, blessings and peace to you, Thomas. I hope that you're well. But anyways, his boy uh, got one of these. It was just like after his grandfather passed away, because his grandfather wouldn't allow anybody to hunt the birds in the valley or anywhere near their property. And so after the grandfather passed away, one of the one of this fellow's sons got a tag for these and shot one of these birds. You have to use it. You can't use a scatter gun on them. You do have to actually like use a 22 rifle or some other like small caliber rifle. You know, if you use a larger caliber rifle, it's it's gonna destroy the whole thing. But you know, a varmint gun like a 22 caliber rifle is perfect for that size of creature. And anyway, he shot one of those, and then he was processing it and pulling the feathers off and everything. But the kid couldn't handle the fact that it was just loaded with lice. Just the head lice, the amount of body lice on these creatures he got like so terribly grossed out. And then his uncle who lived next door, his only words were, I like looking at these birds better than eating them. But anyways, that was the story I have on what hunting these creatures, and they're not as tasty as you think they are. So you think that, oh yeah, they're gonna be just like, your Thanksgiving turkey that you buy in a store. That's not anything like that, because these guys, they run around the wild, and they don't get a lot of grain. They don't get the stuff that they feed the factory farm turkeys or the farm turkeys. They don't feed them any of those same things. And so they get just what's out in the wild. And very rarely, if you hunted one of those ones that was like 4 years old, it's gonna be just like bubble gum in your mouth. I mean, I've had geese when I was growing up, and there were geese that were just raised on this property, and put them on, yeah, a bit gamey, and put them on the grill. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly what my neighbor did. Actually, my neighbor put it on his smoker. He put it in his smoker, and that was how they were able to eat it. He said it was great, but like I've said, this guy he is like almost like a near professional level hunter. He's been hunting all his life, and then but yeah, I got some bear in the freezer that I got from the tribe. I can't stomach it. My even little Pee-wee couldn't handle it, and I wasn't gonna waste any of the pork sausage or anything I have, mixing it in there uh, for that matter. Yeah. So yeah, your brother used to hunt them, and they were a bit gamey. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My dad would have, if these birds were here and my dad was alive. I'm sure that he would have hunted them, because he loved to hunt too. I never took to it. I shot one deer in my life when I was like 15, I think, 14 or 15, and yeah, stuff from oranges and apples, yeah. And I was pretty traumatized by I was traumatized by having killed a creature like a big deer like that. It was a really traumatic event. I never really got over it, and so I never really took got that hunting and killing spirit. It was not something that um, it was not something I I could do. So it was like we started like with I think I took a gun safety class in the seventh grade, between the seventh and eighth grade, with the NRA was putting those on. So now they're starting to leave. Once they stay here for I don't know like 15 minutes and they leave. Now this one's going because it's getting bored and it's time to go to the next place. Soon these other ones are going to realize that one of their brothers or their sisters is gone, and they'll start leaving too. So you wasn't big on hunting, and you have a high reaction to the noises. Yeah. I don't necessarily have any problems with the noises, Thomas, but it was it was the killing. It was the killing that I couldn't do. I guess I just don't have murder in my heart. I do have some guns that I inherited because everybody who lives in the country owns guns. And I did buy in 2020 I bought a Vermont gun, but a CO2 powered rifle. I used it for an art project actually. An idea that I had. But you know, anyways, why am I talking about guns? I don't. It's not really because I'm talking about hunting and these birds and so forth. I should clean the windows up a little bit better. I turned the camera around the other way, but I haven't shaved, and my shirt's not all that presentable. Anyways, A's over there. Get the. I should get the. Wait, what just happened? Nothing. Get the tripod. There we go. I'll set it there, and then I'll go get my tripod. No, that's not working. I gotta put these boxes someplace else. Everything's in the way. Alright, let's try this. Oh, it looks like there's only one person here. Okay. Anyways, there they are. They're over there. Sorry about the shake up. They're coming out, and they're about ready to exit stage left. I think I'm going to try setting one of these up in leaving now. Yep, they're gone. Just running away. Well, anyway, for all y'all who stayed for the show, thank you. I'm going to probably set up another live stream in about an hour from now to do some art. Unless Tarot Ass Backwards is ready and I can do the show that we had planned to do on Thursday. So yeah, I might do that, a show that I had planned to do on Thursday. But I've had a migraine since Thursday. That's what Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's 3 days, and I'm sick of taking the damn effing drugs. I've taken lots of drugs and stuff for it. Oh, looks like the turkeys are coming back. They found something, and I did a lot of caffeine today. That seemed to be helping, but this has really been really a stubborn migraine. I haven't had one this bad in years. I don't know what the issue is, but I was like turning a little bit earlier. I was turning my light on. I have a light, for wintertime light that's supposed to help. But I turned that thing on, and immediately my head started. It's like, oh my god, it's gonna kick back into high gear pain if I keep this light up. And maybe that's the issue. I really don't know. I know if you guys out there have migraines, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you have chronic migraines because they just come, they go, they come. I think I have like on average like 5 migraines a month. But when I was working in that casino and and I was having 3 to 5 migraines a week. They may have been the same migraines, or they just may have been kicking migraine, boom, 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 and then just over and over again, back-to-back migraines. Yeah, they are annoying. Yeah, so I don't know because I was like arguing with my doctor, and I kept on saying that I thought the employer was the trigger, and he said, oh no, that's not possible. And no, because then of course I think, well, then if the employer is not the trigger, then how come I get those migraines as soon as I hit the parking lot? You drive into the parking lot of your employer, and then by the time you go into the back door and you clock in, the migraines almost like started, and by the time you hit the floor, it's like full bore, head on. Like you got this smack with a goddamn car. And that's the way it was when I was at that employer especially when I went up front. When I was in the back and I was working with the buffet, those migraines weren't as bad. But the job of working in the buffet as a food and beverage cashier was not as stressful. It was actually kind of fun. But then I needed more money, so I went after the money, and I went and got myself a cocktail server job. It was on the graveyard shift, and then it was like migraines for the entire, what, 13 months that I was in that job. Then I moved into a bar back position, and then I got less migraines, and then I moved into a bartender position and got less. Then I got prescribed drugs to go on migraines and migraine drugs and shit like that, and but I don't know. Eventually, I had to quit the job because I was with the migraines. I was making way too many mistakes on the job. I was making mistakes like serving people who were intoxicated, or maybe I just didn't want to. They look like they were good enough. I couldn't. I don't know. I served way too many people who were intoxicated and broke house policies and so forth. Uh, and then the last mistake I made was under an incredible amount of pressure, because then the employment, they did this thing where they were they put 2 people in a 1-person bar, and 2 people can't operate that bar. You could only have like 1 person at the well at the time, and you can barely do 1 person at the cash register, 1 person at the well. You can't have there was no way that 2 people could make drinks at the same time. It was just a really super tight, like a small bar. It was like a little service bar, and you had like a few snacky foods, like some pizzas and I think, did they serve hot dogs there? maybe they serve some hot dogs and a few different, I don't know. They served a couple food items, little mini pizzas and maybe it's nachos. I don't know. I mean, that was the bingo hall. And anyways, why would you want to hear about my work experience of working in a casino? I worked, but I left. I could always go back. It's been 5 years. I still go back. I don't know if I would go back in as a bartender. That would be nice actually, because that was really good money. Made I made between $50,000 and $60,000 a year, where my base wage was like $13 an hour, and I was shoveling. What was I shoveling? Like 50% of my base wage right into a 401k. That's. I left my 401k there so that if I went back in any position, then that any I set it up that anything would start going into that 401k, and you start saving your money again, and because that's also a very important thing to learn if you are a worker, is to learn how to save money. It's easy, even at low wages. It's easy to, at any wage, it's easy to blow your entire paycheck. You know, I mean, like one of my relatives, she has a sales area of almost half the United States, not state wise, but in territory wise. Um, it's like Alaska, Oregon, California, Washington, um, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and I think it goes out into Texas too. And so she has this, that it's not quite, it's volume wise or area wise, it's like half the United States. And I think she makes, like, Katniss, welcome. She makes like $150,000 a year plus bonuses, and she blows every penny of that job, and every penny of that money she doesn't to save anything, and you and so that it all just depends on how you organize your brain. Now you can shovel anything. If you're that kind of person and you can't save money, you need to do some other things, like have things set up that, like, okay, you're going to funnel in, what, 10% of your check into a 401k, or you set up, some kind of a savings account, money market account, or something like that, and then you just have it right at the point of payroll, at the payroll time, and have it like a payroll deduction that goes right off into these different accounts. And then so when you get your paycheck and it gets deposited in your checking account, it's much easier to save money if you're one of those type of people. Now me, with the bartending, I was getting paid in cash, and every every week or every other week, I would go to the bank with a big stack of $1 bills, and I'd make a deposit in my account. I set my financial structure up so that I had a bank account, had a checking account, a money market account, and a credit card, a limited, like it had like a $2,000 limit credit card. And so all of my bills went out on went out on that credit card, with that credit card. And so everything that it was paid for on that credit card. And then every week, every other week, I would go in to the bank and just pay off the balance, and it all in like $1 bills. And so, like, if you're bartending in a casino or you work in a casino, you at the end of your shift, you in the beginning of your shift, you pick up a bank that you would be your amount of money. I think that for a bartending, it was like a I picked up enough, and I picked it up enough that money, and I changed the bills around so that I could cash out like $300 bills in a row, and I had enough for that. And then they took extra money every day, even on the slow days, which were the Monday through Thursday days. I think my days off were Sunday, were Monday and Tuesday, so Wednesday through Sunday. But on the weekends, definitely you wanted to have enough money that you didn't have to go call a supervisor and say, "Hey, I like ran out of money. Can you come and get me some change?" And so, if you were smart with how you organized your bank, you took your regular bank and then you took an extra amount, because this was money you didn't have to go through a cashier. They had set it up. Yeah, both your sons are good at saving money, and they don't make a lot. Yeah, that's right. You can save a lot of money if you don't make, but it's just all depends on how you set up your life. And so what I guess what I was getting at is that with that, I get in so as a casino bartender, the your they set up your pay at this casino. They set up your pay a little bit different than if you like work in a restaurant. And what they did is they did the system of allocation, and they had like an average number. So if you had $10 in sales, you would they would think that you would get like 16% in tips. I think that was about right. So 16 cents on the dollar. Essentially, you would for every dollar of that you sold, that you would most likely make like 16 cents in tips. And so they would base your taxation level based on your sales. So you'd have your base wage, whatever that was. In the state of Oregon, it starts at like minimum wage, and then it goes up from there. I think their base wage for tipped workers now is like $15 an hour. And then if you're a non-tipped worker, the base wage is like $18 an hour. So if you're pushing a vacuum cleaner around, your starting wage is $18 an hour. But if you're a tipped worker, it's like $15 an hour, whatever the minimum wage is. And then you do get raises every year. Maybe it's not very much, but you get a little bit of a raise every year these days. And then from your base wage, they pay you put money out into 401ks. That's your main savings plan. And then you have your medical. So if it's just you, they pay the medical premium. But if you have wife and you have children, then it's a big sum of money for each one of those people. And so if that's kind of things. But your taxation on your main front of your money comes from tips and tips. And so there's like there's an expectation that you're making like 16-18% on the dollar for every dollar that you sell. That's how much money you're going to get in tips. And so then they take that 18% and they tack it on to whatever your base wage is. Then they tax you on that amount. And so if your sales are really really high, let's say you're like a really really good a good server, and like good servers could easily do um, $5,000 of sales on a Friday and Saturday night. If you do 10, 20, $30,000 of sales a week, well, your wage is based upon those gross sales. And so what would that be? Let's say if it's 20, 16%, 10% of what 20,000 is. My math is not good. I don't have a calculator in front of me. But you get the picture. You just take those you multiply that number by 1.16, and you get what the number that you're being taxed on. And so though you get a wage amount, um, at the end of the pay period, that wage could actually be zero. The amount of money that you get from your $15 an hour could be literally zero. And then some people owed money because if they had like their wife and their children on their medical care, they would go from their cash allotment that they had, and they would just pony up and pay out $400 a month just to pay for the medical insurance for their kids, and so forth. And that was the way it was. And so because you don't think about that. You don't think about like, okay, you go to work, and you don't think about that you may actually have to owe your employer money at the end of the pay period. I mean, just listen to that sink in, that you owe your employer money. Now, granted, when you think about that, you don't really think about the fact that you may be sitting on, because that top bartender, the one who, well, he got fired about 2 weeks after I quit, and but he had a real strong personality, and I get back to that story but anyways, two people in that little bar, we were assigned on a fight night. So like Saturday nights, there was like a concert every Saturday night. Do some people quit and still owe? Probably. Probably. I don't know, but I haven't heard about that. No, actually what happens, Katniss, is if you still owe, they'll take it out of your final paycheck. And so if you get fired, they're supposed to have your paycheck there. By the time they walk you out, they're supposed to draft that paycheck. They don't usually, it's not usually that way, but they might take it out. So like when I quit, I cashed out with $1,000 of PTO time, and I think they did have my paycheck on the last day that they walked me out. They had it, or I don't know, I don't remember, but some people were. But one of the biggest reasons why I quit is because I was in this situation in this little bar. The behind the bar is a little bar that's this really little space. It was, and so the well was there. Just the window was about 6 feet wide, and the well was about 4 feet. That's the well being that's where you had your well bottles of booze, and you had a bin of ice, and you had a little tray on there what had your condiments and the thing, like some limes and some other things, and you had your syrups and stuff that you used to make drinks. And then right behind you you had a 2 kegs of beer. I think they've changed it now so that everything's on lines there. And then the pop came in on lines that were like 50. I think they were like 100-foot lines. So the pop was. It doesn't matter. Anyways, they did have this thing where they transported beer like 100 feet from keg rooms, or they transported cola and stuff like from 100 feet away in a different location, and so you had your liquor, you had all that, and this place was just barely big enough for one person to operate, but somebody had the bright idea to put two people in there on a fight night, or any night, didn't matter, and you can barely just turn around, and then you can't even turn around and without bumping into a person. But they put me in with this one guy who was I think he was pretty. Had a big, bold, bombastic person. Yeah, claustrophobic. Yeah, that's right. It was kind of claustrophobic, and this big, bold, bombastic personality, and he was a storyteller, but he was a mesmerizer. He was a mesmerizer, and he can mesmerize people out of their money. And so he made more money than anyone else, and he came out of Las Vegas. He could juggle the bottles and do all that stuff. They wouldn't let anybody else juggle bottles or anything like that. And so somehow with his big, bold, bombastic, he was also pulling scams. His big, bold, bombastic, yes, he had that charisma. And I know he didn't like me. I know that he didn't like me for some reason or another. I don't know why, but maybe he didn't like anybody there. I think he only liked the girls and the people who that he would work with. That when they worked together, they could magnify that money. And so he was one of those. I think he was like on the level of making 100 grand a year as a bartender in a small Indian gaming casino, an indigenous gaming casino. It's you're that's a shit, that's a ton of money to make. And so I was a day shift bartender for the most part, and I made um the books said I made, yes, he was that narcissist, I believe. And so the book said on paper it said that I made like 50,000 a year, but I actually made between 60 and 70,000 a year because I made over that allocated amount. I made my tax. I think the amount of money that I made was, so like the average may have been like 16 or 8, depending on the bar you worked in, 16, 18, or 19 percent on the every dollar that somebody's, that you get like 19% tip back for every dollar spent. And my rate was more like between 20 and 25% on the average. So I made more money than a lot of other people. It's probably because I have a more of a, I don't know why. I don't know why. I did better. I did better. I was a nice person, but I also had trouble telling people no. And then I had a little trouble with the confrontation. And then when I was with around a lot of drunks, they scared me. I guess it's that thing that makes me a good card reader, where I can go and kind of read your guys' energy here in the chat, or a little bit, kind of get a sense of who you are. I don't know. I can kind of do that when my mind is in there. That thing is the same thing that hijacked me on that job. Massive migraines all the time. That the thing that made it so that when that guy was standing right behind me and I felt all that anger, because yes, a bit empathic, and I felt all of that anger because he was directing it at me, because he was kept on, for all the week before that, he was kept on asking me to call out on that day, don't come to work. And then the day before that day, he said, I really don't like working with you. I don't want to work with you because you're just going to make me lose money. And so I came into my shift the next day, I think 4 hours before he came on. And there was all that energy. Yeah, there was all that energy that was directed right at me. And during that time, and then at the height of it, where I think it was, yeah, it was a fight night. They were showing, it was like an MMA fight with one of those famous boxers. I know, yeah. Welcome, Roman. Yeah, and so there was, and he came in. When he came in, I had there was 150 people waiting in line for their drinks. That was where I was at, and I was almost out of money, and I needed money, and I didn't really need any help. because I was just taking people one at a time, because I was using my single tasker mind, my my semi my semi uh, my neurodivergent mind from the audio processing disorder, where I was just taking each task one at a time, where I wasn't feeling the line pressure. I knew that there were like, what, 100, 150 people waiting in line for drinks, and I was working as fast as I could, taking each transaction at a time. Take their money, make their drink, take their money, make their drink. Well, when this guy came in, and then I felt all that energy pouring into me, and then I made a mistake. I made a mistake with the money. I took $100 bill and I put it in the 20 spot. And the next transaction, I gave it out as change. And I was like almost $100 off. And if you're $100 off, you get one chance at this. The next time you get a single penny off on your till, you're fired. You're out of there. And so I had that mistake. And it was like it turned out to be like an $80 mistake on the till, on the money. And at that point in time, I started looking for another job, because I knew that, they were able to, the casino and the management forgave on a lot of different things, but they didn't forgive on the money. Weekend Daddy, I'm just telling stories right now. I'm distracting myself from I'm on a 3-day migraine, and I'm distracting myself. And so this is a variety show, just telling a story. When I first came on, it was the turkeys came in, and so it's got some talk. I'm just talking real talk about real stuff that happens in life, and telling a story about when I used to work at a casino as a bartender, and how I almost got fired from a job, or I would have gotten fired from that job, and the mistake that caused that was a money mistake. And anyways, that's what this live stream is about. And it was about those turkeys that ran in about 42 minutes ago to go, and they were kind of fighting over a bagel that I yeah, there was Katniss, the teamwork issue is that you're right, and there was no teamwork, and there were all these bosses, and then you had like one of the scheduling boss was a sociopath, and now unfortunately she's not there now. She's still there. She's still at the casino because she married somebody who was tribal, and so if you want to be a supervisor or go up in the management, you got to marry somebody. You either got to be tribal or you got to marry somebody who's tribal. But they have all these different bosses, and some of them were they were out for you. They were. Hey, anyways, my mother was having some trouble with the remote control. So yeah, you're right. That you had all these different bosses, and some of them they may not like you, and they're out gunning for you. And so I knew that there were bosses that didn't like me, and they were gunning for me, trying to find any way possible to get rid of you. And then there's other ones that did like me. And so, but the thing is, I was really late. I never called out. I did maybe occasionally. I called out when I had a toothache. And I didn't call out when I had those migraines every day. Um, I think that there was the ones who didn't care that I wasn't a tasker, and there was the ones who did. And I don't know. It was just there was just a lot of bullshit going on there. I mean, but the other thing is what I had found out after I had left is that the majority of the people working there have migraines, and people who never had migraines before, as soon as they start working there, they get migraines. Treadman 26, welcome. Yeah, it is a toxic environment there, I I know it's kind of interesting because when people go to the tribal center and work, it's not a toxic environment over there, and people love working at the tribal center. You know, whether they're working in the med center, whether they're working on the grounds crew, whether they're doing whatever they got going on over there. You know, it's really hard for a pure Caucasian person to get a a job at the tribal center. You have to actually be tribal, or you got to marry somebody who's tribal in order to get a job over there. But you know, if you marry somebody you're in tribal and you go move into tribal housing, you know, you automatically you don't have to pay state taxes anymore. If you're a person who doesn't like to pay taxes, I mean, I don't mind paying taxes because that's what drives civilization forward. You have to pay your dues into the into to run the country, and so um, but yeah, it's that I think what it is with the casino is that because the focus is all about the money, and and it's that and it's that money, when you focus solely on money, that itself is kind of a toxic kind of a spirit. And it's taken me years now to just it took me like 4 years just to unwind from that job, to unwind. And when I start bringing it up to people that I used to work with, it and they says, Bill, I don't want you talking about that place ever again. You know, the middle class are the ones that pay the taxes. You're right. You're right. But you know, Fatima, the lower classes also pay the taxes too, because there's all kinds of voluntary taxes that people pay. And so like liquor taxes, hotel taxes, park fees, and then there's all the taxes that are laid on, like line taxes if you are with a phone carrier or something. Yes, the middle and the lower classes pay all the taxes, and the upper classes pay a smaller amount. And but you know, a lot of the reasons why the middle and the lower classes pay all the taxes is because we are in the United States, we are 80 years out of the progressive era. And so my cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, instituted an extremely high tax rate. And actually, I had found out that to my mom's great grandmother or grandmother, um, yeah, that's right. She would have been born in like the 1880s area. That they were between that Parks family and the Roosevelt family. That it was like three or four. It was like a third or fourth cousin. So that would be, to me, would be like a sixth cousin to sixth or seventh cousin away to um, any of the current descendants of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's where I'm at about that. And that would probably be about the same as, I think, is on that Mayflower line. It's I have three presidents on there, and I have the Bush family, and so you got the two, George H.W. and George W. Bush. Those are because we're kind of like at the same level away from the. I think I'm like 13 generations away from John Howland and Elizabeth Tilley, who came over on the Mayflower, and George W. Bush is 12. And so then Franklin Delano Roosevelt would have been like 10 generations away. I think that's right. I think right if I got the calculations right. But nevertheless, 80 years ago, we had the progressive era in the United States, and they built they built the middle class by high taxation of the wealthy class, and so what we are experiencing today is payback for that. That's my it's sort of it's a revenge on the upper class having revenge on the lower class to shift the tax burden onto the lower classes, and because traditionally they didn't have to pay. The kings didn't pay taxes. The the pharaohs and those people, they didn't pay for that. Now they assumed welcome, welcome the more intuitive me. Yeah, I probably should have set this up as a in StreamYard and then did it like an open panel. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try that sometime soon. But yeah, that's just my take on the matter, is that it's just as simple as that. They're taking it's a maybe that's the spirit. I don't know. I don't. That's just me. But I do think that I talked a little bit about this on the More Intuitive Me's channel about how you give a person a little bit of money and they go a little bit nuts, and with how you especially if it's like if earned money versus given money. And so if you were to win the lottery, I don't play those big lotteries like because don't know what I would do with the money, and I play the state lotteries, which I do think is a voluntary tax. But if you win like a net $1 million, well, that's about how much money you could save in a 401k in 20-30 years of work. It's not unreasonable to think, because I know one of the guys in my writers group, he's at 67, and he lost his job at age 50 and was never able to get another job. But all through his life working, he bought stocks, he bought bonds, he played the stock market, he bought into it. He saved his money that way, and through when he at 50 years old, he was able to live on the dividends and live on those investments in the stock market, with the way the stock market rose up in in those things in value. And then so yeah, people should make it, they should do that, and they should do that. You're right. But we would have to be more like those wild turkeys that come in and that visit my my yard. They visit my property. We have to be more like them. We have to be more like the cows. We have to be more like the herbivore or the herding animals, who they make sure that everybody gets enough to eat, and then they congregate together, roosting up in the trees or being together, more communal. We have to be more like them, and we kind of are, but some of us are, but a lot of us aren't. And so you have to use the power of government to force those who aren't community minded to be community minded. And that's the conundrum that we have within the humanity, is that how do you have to get a balance there between you're paying for the civilization and those who are willing to pay for the civilization and those who are not. And so who is it that's governing the body of humanity? Is it just a few people? Is it just a few kings? Or is it more of more representativeness of the entire body? So you have the people who believe they should be kings. You at the table, the same table as the people who are living outdoors in tents and so forth. So you have that mix of people coming together, and we're not talking politics. I'm just talking. We have that mix of people together, deciding what the rules of society are. That's at least that's where I come down on. And then, but it's really hard because you have all these different people, and you have the do-gooders, and you have then you have the live and let livers, and you have the people who want to control other people. You have all those people, and how do we all get along? And that's where we're at, and that's why we see these big swings in especially the last 100 years, why we see these big swings in governance. And so you have a progressive era followed by a non-progressive era, and we're kind of from the last 50 years we swung the other way, away from progressive policies, policies that benefit the maximum amount of people. Now we have policies that benefit some people, and we are all sitting back and trying our best. But then if you want to, let's say we take a look at this in just a different way. We're still better off. We're still better off than we were 200 years ago. We're still better off than we were 100 years ago at the lower echelons. And and for the most part, I don't know, I can't speak about other parts of the world. Welcome, Fabio. Welcome. And I don't know. I think the majority of people are still better off than they were, because the arc of history is going in a direction where things are just getting better every generation. That it doesn't feel like it, but if you have studied a little bit of history, you can see that this is true. You can see that you don't speak any English. Anyway, you can see that the truth of this is that now the Pilgrims, I don't speak Portuguese, I'm sorry, but I do have relatives that migrated from Portugal to the United States about 70 years ago. And the Pilgrims, they wrote about how terrible the world was, especially when they sailed from England to was it Denmark? They stayed in Denmark for a few years, and then from there, I gotta stoke the fire up. Denmark, and then they came back. They went across the ocean, and they landed in Plymouth Rock, and then they were here. And I'm gonna just turn the camera around just for a second, and I'll be right back. I'm gonna stoke the fire up. Fire's almost out. Geez, I let the fire go out while I was talking. hopefully it'll start back up again. So anyway, because the pilgrims, they talked about how terrible the world was and how the world was going to end at any moment. Because when we talk about this apocalyptic things, like, because I've had this ongoing conversation with Tarot Ask Backwards about apocalyptic stuff, and from my studies, it seems that every generation thinks the world is going to end. Every generation thinks that their generation is the worst generation. I am from the Pacific Northwest, and I am roughly a couple days walk away from the ocean. But anyways, if you look at the arc of history and how things have gone on, and every single generation thinks the world is going to end. Every single generation thinks. A lot of people, it's so my mother just kind of said, because she's like 85, she says, not every generation thinks the world is going to end. That's true. Not everyone does, but many generations, they think the world is going to end, and most generations think that the previous generation, people were better off. But what the data shows is the exact opposite of that. The exact opposite. The every generation has been better off than the one previous. It's just that for some reason the way you think, you look back in your childhood and you think, oh, things were better when I was a kid, and it was better then. But technology and well, anyway, since the Industrial Revolution, anyway, I think that each generation has been better off the next following generation by generation to a certain degree. Yeah, they will. There is that every generation knows that it will fall off the treadmill of life. Yes, there is that. But it also, you kind of have this sense that my glasses are failing me. And each generation thinks that things were simpler. Well, they weren't simpler when you were a kid. Because when you're a kid, most things were provided for you. And then when you become an adult, you have to learn how to provide for yourself and be independent. And that's really tough. I remember my 20s. My 20s were miserable. And, I think I had like a depression spell that lasted like 15 years. It faded away when I hit my 30s. And because it took a good 10 years to learn how. Oregon. I live in the state of Oregon. It took me a good 10 years to learn how to be an adult. And you never, a lot of things you just never get over. Like paying rent is like, I don't like paying rent. I don't pay rent, not paying rent now, but I also don't have an income. I'm working as a caregiver for my mother, and I cook for my mom. I cook for the dog. I supervise and make sure that she doesn't fall down or whatnot. That is probably is true. That is true, that this is the first generation. And the thing is, I wasn't as well off as my father was. Now my sister's kids are more well off than her kids are, than she was, or they're even more well off than what they're maybe not as much as their grandparents were pretty well off too. But my sister's kids, half of them have, um, well, two of them anyway, are sales. They're salespeople. Yeah, thank you, Katniss. And two of my sister's kids are really excellent. My sister was a really good salesperson before the MS really kind of took its toll on her life. And still, she's like 60 years old, and she still is working on reinventing herself and her business. They had to quit this year for some reason or another. I know why, but I'm not going to talk about it because it's none of your guys' business. And her oldest daughter and her youngest daughter are really, really good at sales. And so I think on my side of the family, it came from my father's father. My yeah, Dean Bow. Yeah, so yeah, you're welcome. And so it's they were. I think they were. I don't know. I think my grandfather. I never really met him because he died when I was 4. But he had talked about needing to be a Democrat in one beer joint and a Republican in the next, and needing to be fluid in your conversations with others. And he was a first generation American from Sweden, and his wife was an immigrant and from Sweden. And and that was kind of like I had remembered that something that my dad had told me about that need to sometimes in operating in this world that you got to play both sides, and maybe you have your own beliefs and I have my own beliefs, and we don't aren't talking politics on this channel because I don't want to talk party politics at all because I don't want to alienate anybody because I have my beliefs and you've got your beliefs, and I you don't need to know my voting record and I don't need to know your voting record. And so that's where I'm leaving it. And but I'm going to talk. If I talk, I want to feel like talking about history and things like that, which is talking history and talking about different things and more broader broader issues and bigger things. But where I my sister was in when I was a teenager, it was talked about that she could sell an ice cube to an Eskimo. That was the way that her ability to charm somebody was very, very good. She was very charming and able to and had a lot of charisma. And she had an ability to sell sell a vision and pull you in to sell a vision. But all of that stuff went away with when the MS and her migraines became really, really bad. And though she's had migraines since she was 3, I've had migraines since I was a kid as well. But anyways, and I don't know that I don't necessarily have those kinds of skills, but so her daughters, 2 of her daughters are just top-notch salespeople. That's what their gifts is. Now her youngest son is had is extremely frugal with his money, and he's actually going into business. He's what 26 years old, and he's invested in a franchise, a restaurant franchise, and between the time that he was like 18 and like 22, he had saved $50,000. He saved $50,000, and you know, I had actually from my bartending job up, I'd saved. I don't have that money. I most of that money was used in things like during the first part of the pandemic, and for just a couple of years, I had saved like $20,000 on like $1 bills. Yeah, so I had like at one time I had like $10,000 of cash stashed away in a safe spot on the property, and yeah, and so when I was working as a bartender, I guess I was talking about that earlier, and I found it immensely easy to save money in cash, in cash dollars, and so I got like you'd start your shift, you'd pick your bank up at the cashier, and then yeah, that is, and so and then he also has been buying and selling stuff on Amazon, and he spends his own money, and he has amassed, I think he's amassed close to like $100,000 or more by now, and he's just gifted. Um, he doesn't buy anything. He's very tight with his dollars. His dollar, and then he has these goals and these things that he wants to do, and he wants to, and so his oldest uncle was also very gifted in business, and so we have this system that we have here, and we talked about where we have Dean has talked about where this is the first generation where people aren't better off than their parents, but there are people who are more better off, and that's what I'm trying to say, that part of the system, it still works for people. It's not, it hasn't been completely corrupted, and because you look at how many people granted there is all that terrible things that are going on, and I'm not going to mention those terrible things that are going on, and I don't want to talk about that, but people still can make something of themselves. They still can make something of themselves, and come from very little, and then become, and then do so, in business and things like that. That still is possible. And anyways, but yeah, I was talking about how I got so sidetracked here, and I'm sorry. I know Gold Monday's not still here. Roman's probably not still here, but when I had my conversation with him the other day, we got sidetracked to. I think we kind of I wanted to talk more about him. Instead, we ended up doing a little bit more BSing, and so maybe I turned a good opportunity into a bad opportunity, because I got too sidetracked in about everything. And yeah, anyways, just talking about money and so forth. Oh, you like that show? Great. I'm glad that you did like that show. I liked it. I had fun talking to him too. It was, it was a good show, but I do have a tendency to get sidetracked. But it's also, Katniss, that I didn't have a plan when I started that show, and so like a lot of times when I did the coloring the tarot shows, I would have a whole list of questions that I want to ask the person, and so you were able to direct things, but leave things open to just meander and go wherever. But yeah, anyways, I guess I kind of started this story and talked about, oh yeah, that was right. What most people did at that casino when they worked in those tip positions is that when they got off shift, they traded their money. They traded their money. They traded the money in. So like on any given shift, I walked home with $40 of quarters in my pocket. I didn't, I got off shift and I just wanted to go home. You turn in your money and then you have your tip monies. I counted my tip monies. I turned in my monies and I wrote it down. And I found my tip. I have a tip tracker book. I think I still have that one from when and I write down a number down, and then I went home and I entered that number in a spreadsheet, and I kept track of how much money I made every day, but it was all like in quarters, and it was in $1 bills for the most part. And so I would come home and I'd have a big wad of $1 bills. I'd have like $200 in ones and or $300 in ones, or depending on the type of shift you did. Maybe you had a really good night and you came home with $500 of $1 bills, at the end of a shift. I don't think I had that good of a day. I think the average on like a fight night or weekend was like maybe $300. So you work you got your base wage, you do like a 9-10 hour shift, and so yeah, there's like $30 an hour in cash that you're taking home with you. And I think that's what I figured what my average was between 25 and $40 an hour on any given day is what I made in cash from that job. Welcome, James. Welcome. I am from the Pacific Northwest, and I'm just talking about stuff that may not be important or whatnot. I'm not really bragging, but I never had a job that like more in my life and doing different things. Oh, you don't know where that is? Oh, you're from Scotland. I'm from Oregon. I'm on the west coast of the United States, James, and so there is. I'm gonna show you America, and Washington State, Oregon State, California. So that's where I'm at. I'm right here. So Washington State, Oregon State, California. This is backwards. And so it really should be that way towards the west, but if you look at it, and this is the Pacific Ocean, and up here's Canada, down here is Mexico. So that's it. And I live really close to the ocean. I live really close to the ocean, and I live on a pass, and I live in the coastal mountains. So yeah, easy. And on one edge of the mountains, I go in a little bit inland, and I'm in where most of the wines is. Most of the wine, Oregon wines are produced like 15-20 miles away into the valley. And then I'm in an area where the main industry it used to be timber, and now it seems to be casino. Logging, timber, mills. My father owned and operated a lumber mill from like 1974 to 1995. My hobbies are YouTube, and my hobbies are painting. And so, like, this here is something I painted a couple of years ago, 2022, and that's and I have. Oh, would you like to see some of my bad art? And then another hobby, I guess, is tarot. That's one of my other hobbies. And so I guess I was going to show that. I was going to show. I have my early art. This is the bad stuff. This is the stuff that when I did it, I thought was good, but now it's like it's really cringy. It's the cringe stuff. And so I was going to do this, yeah. And so this here is some of my cringe art. I don't know why I thought this was good. I can tell now that it's just like kindergarten level stuff. It's like kindergarten smudges on a paper. You like that? Yeah. This is like total kindergarten art. All right, that's that one. I got another one now. Here is a self-portrait. This is a little bit better. Maybe you're cringe, huh? Okay, so this is me. See, you can see the resemblance. This is me. Okay. This one is a little bit better, but it's still pretty bad. I pull these out so I can like reuse some of them. The canvas boards, no, but this is something I can peel this stuff off, and I haven't had the heart to get rid of it because it shows where you were at when you started, and now you're someplace else. So here, this is from the beginning. I started painting 9 years ago. So this is also kind of from the beginning. It's still like that. It's like that kindergarten art kind of a thing. I guess maybe you could say that when you do start something, you very much are in a kindergarten sense. I gotta see if Jeff wants to do that. I better check on that. Check my email. Sorry, I'm just kind of get distracted. Need to turn that show off. I've been kind of like not. Oh no, Mona Lisa's. No. Okay, no, I didn't, because I kind of set a time. Okay, but here is another one. This one was when I was bar backing. It was before. Yeah. I don't think so. This is like from 20. I don't know. This was from before I got that bartending job. I can tell you about how when you do get a job where you can make a decent amount of money, that it is kind of corrupting. Now, this here is better. This one's not a cringe piece, James. This one's better. I like this one a lot. I took this one to the art fair this year, and I like how it's like a nighttime scene or really close to night. The sun's, here's the moon in the sky, and the sun is right on the horizon or just below, and that light is ripping through the water, and you can see the bioluminescence underneath. And you got the waves up here, but underneath you have all this light that is coming up from below the ocean. Maybe it's illuminated by the moon up here, the last rays of light from the sun. And I like this one. And you get that sunset kind of a thing. And this one is really pretty. It's but it's from a few years back. This is kind of an early art piece, but I like this one because I was using all these pearl, these reflective paints, and I did this. I remember distinctly when I did do this painting because it was working at night. I was working on the night shift. I think I was working graveyard at the time. Very early on in my painting, and so that was kind of that. Here's another one of those self-portraits. And then I did another one. I sold one of these. I sold one of these a few years ago for $100. I think this was the best one. I don't think I would. I think that I would put a lower price tag on it if you wanted to buy this one. I would. If you were in the continental United States, I'll sell it to you for $100, including the shipping. I think that would be about right. So you like that? You like that one too? Yeah, it's really it has a bunch of these reflective paints that you're supposed to use you're supposed to use a respirator when you work with those, but I didn't. And now this is one that I did this summer. So it was kind of mesmerizing. And this one is using student grade paints. And I think I got one in here that uses the professional grade paints. Or maybe I don't. Now, this one here I did a year ago. But I don't have any of the ones that I use the underpaintings on, and because I sold a few of these that were the done with the underpaintings, and so. But there's a difference here, even between like this one here, which is used a red underpainting, and this one that hasn't. And because with it you go in here. What I like about this is that this cloud bank back in here could have easily have been mountains, faraway mountains, and so it's a feature that I've worked to repeat in other works. And I like this because one of the things is that in my 20s I worked as a wildland firefighter. Because I grew up in the timber industry, and so this is like from memories from that. But there were in 2020 there were some wildfires. They were in this area. They were really close. Oh, the turkeys came back. Oh, they came running back. Look at that. They're just rushing back in here. There they are. I started this thing an hour and a half ago with these turkeys running in here. And here they are. Here they are again. And then this one is the last one of my oh no, James, they're wild. They're wild animals, and they live here rent free. Not completely rent free. And there's another one that's kind of walking up here. It's like the ninth one because it's the one I think that okay, it's got 4 of them with it. Here they are. There's 5 of them coming right there. They're just beautiful creatures. I like watching them a lot. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I really like watching these turkeys. It's you kind of learn a lot learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about because we came from them. They came from the dinosaurs, and somewhere along the way we came from them. They're fighting over there. Can you see them over there? They're going and getting some fuckles or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, no, no, James, I don't shoot them. They're as tough as nails. But you can, and there were like almost 40 of them 2 years ago. The landowner of this valley got a bunch of tags, but you can only oh, look at hot up in one of the trees up there. It's in there looking for apples. Um, yes, 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 yes to that question. I inherited some when Dad passed, and then there was the one that was given to me when I was 16, 16th birthday, and they're over there, and they're a little bit frisky today. But you can learn a lot about human behavior by watching these people, these guys, because we all came out of the animal kingdom, and these turkeys are social creatures, and human beings are social creatures too. They're but we're kind of also we also have those other kinds of creatures. We became great. We became great because of us being social creatures. That's how we became great. If we had never been social creatures, we probably never would have evolved beyond primates. I don't know how we evolved. Maybe the aliens. Um, Maybe the aliens, engineered us. I don't know. I don't know if I. I mean, I like those theories, and those theories are really entertaining. The ancient alien theories, and um, I don't know where our origins came from. I don't know if, but I kind of tend to think that we're created beings. I run down that line, but when I was trying to write a novel several years ago, the visions that were coming into my mind on how that creation happened is that directed by it was directed, but maybe it was directed by us, whatever us is. I don't know. You know, there's the template form of who we are that is Toto, welcome. There's the template form, that energetic form that we are, but as we are here, we don't have much awareness of that because it's not really important. Oh wow, those things are really going at it over there. You listen to them. Wow. Did the males come in? When the males come in, there's four males, and when they come into the group, they really are big disruptors. So if there's nine, then it's just the females. One, two, three, four. The males are here. That's why that fighting is going on. And if I go look over there, and they're loud too. You look back there, you got, yeah, yeah. I better not film them much because I got a video banned because of those males before. Anyways, no, that's kind of exciting, but you can learn a lot about yourself just by watching them and watching other creatures like them. Yeah, they're pretty loud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then you have like what is it? The big disruptors of society are the males. That's what the lesson I see here is. They're territorial. They're um, more territorial. They're vying for leadership or whatever that means for being the alphas. You got four alphas together just fighting it out. Hmm. To the algorithm, I'm not invoking any of this. We're just watching. We're observers. I observing them. So if this video is not available for the playback, it's because of a community violation of me happening to film uh, these creatures getting into it, which doesn't quite seem fair. And when the AI flags your content, there's no way to appeal because you can't like put a text in and say, hey, well, I was just watching. I was just was an observer, and why as an observer am I at fault for that? But anyways, I've been on here for like almost 90 minutes, and I want to thank everybody for hanging out here with me. Not everyone here was here this whole time. Thank you, James. Thank you, Toto. Thank you, the more intuitive me. Um, and as James is concerned, okay, I don't um, I don't eat the turkeys. They're here. I don't hunt the turkeys. To hunt the turkeys, you need to be an indigenous to this area. The only people who can hunt the turkeys are people who are indigenous Americans, not Americans who have been here forever and ever, but you have to be. Um, wow, those guys they're really. What is it? Is it like breedings? No, I couldn't. Can't be that. You have to you can't. Not anybody can hunt the turkeys. It's just certain peoples, and if you're yeah, if you're an indigenous American, not one of the colonizers like me, then you can hunt the turkeys. But the landowner here, yeah, the landowner has of the valley will, when animals start to become a pest, like that the elk herd gets too big or the turkeys get their herds get too big, then they can apply for tags from the state and they can get them issued. But if that's not the case for you, then if that's not the case for you, okay. If that's not the case for you, then you either are a landowner, a big landowner, or you're tribal, and those are the only two peoples that can hunt these wild turkeys. And um, yeah, because there's not like there's thousands of them. There's I don't know. They try to keep the herds down. I think this one's got whittled down to like 13 or 14, but it was like close to 40 2 years ago. But there's the big cats. We got big cats. There's like I think 3 cougars that live in the area, and they go after the cats. They go after anything they can get. The big cats. They go after deer. They go after the elk. One of the landowners here lost a couple cows to the so last year. Oh, this year, yeah. You saw an herd. Oh, an Oregon cat. Okay. So are you from Oregon, Katniss? Maybe when I try doing an open, when I don't know. Anyways, in Washington. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what? Well, I'm gonna call it a day. I'm gonna I might do something else later. It looks like my migraine's almost gone. So this is good. I've been talking here for 2 hours and distracting myself from the fact that I'm on the fourth day of a migraine, or this is the third day of I don't know, maybe it's the same migraine, or it's just been going boom, 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 back to back kind of a thing. And I want to have my lunch, make lunch. It's on the wood stove. I've been heating up on the wood stove, and then mom, it's time for her lunch, and then uh, I actually just woke up like 2 hours ago. And so I need to go start my day, go bring the wood in and take a walk and think about maybe uh, maybe I'll do a live on Tools of Fortune. I think I'll do that after dinner. After dinner, I think. Anyway, thank you, Katniss. Thank you, Toto. Thank you, James from Scotland. Thank you, the more intuitive me. Thank you, Fatima. Thank thank you, Dean. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Treadman. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Taro Your Way. Thank you, Tenray. And thank everybody for just hanging out here with me and listening to my boring ass stories and turning the camera on the turkeys and all of that today. And blessings and peace to you, and hope you all have a wonderful day. And happy Thanksgiving coming up. And then we have I have the more intuitive me is going to come on Tuesday, I think 4 o'clock Pacific time, and we're going to do an arts and crafts hour. She's going to be painting a turkey. I'm going to do a construction paper turkey, and I have another show. They're leaving now. I have another show with Tarot Ask Backward coming up, and we're going to be talking about generational dysphoria. And then we'll be hitting Thanksgiving, and then we'll see from there. We'll got some more things going on, maybe some more paint offs, and eventually we're going to be working towards doing more viewer driven content. I might try an open panel thing like Elizabeth did last night, which I had a blast going into her channel for a few minutes, and maybe we'll set this up in like StreamYard, and we'll try it that way. We might try it as a kind of do more of a talk show kind of a thing, more talk showish. I really want to do that though. Anyways, yeah, blessings and peace to you. And Pam, thank you too for coming. And we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.